Yes, thank you, Christopheros. Thank you, Andres.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining to our seminar. My name is Elena Cardi, and I'm responsible for managing the sales operation for Italy and Greece. I would like to thank also our value partner, Channel AT, and for managing this event. I already had the chance to work in Greece and Cyprus in my past experience, and I'm looking forward after this pandemic situation to meet you again in person. I really hope soon. With Netskope and why we are here, we saw a lot of things before in the movie. Netskope is a company with a clear vision and success in the next generation secure web gateway space. What means we will see better in the next few minutes, also with the Andy Applin support. Today, Netskope has over 1,300 employees worldwide, with the headquarters in Santa Clara. Through our history, Netskope is continuing to grow and innovate, continuously investing in our solution. You have to think that approximately 50% of our revenue is invested in research and development, with a high customer satisfaction. 98% of rating, very, very high. We are extremely proud of our team's effort that was able to build in every country, of course, respecting cloud adoption timing. In these last few years, we opened more than 15 data centers. high generation data center in every corner of the world. As you can read in the slide, we founded in 2012 by security leaders and veterans. Netskope today is the only solution cloud native that has unified cloud asset security broker, secure web gateway, and zero trust private access under one platform. We are now a next generation secure web gateway company with a lot of native functionality like DLP, for example, or advanced threat protection. Just for more info, our DLP has been considered by Gartner powerful as an DLP on premises. Netskope, with an important infrastructure called New Age, can provide the governance for all your cloud usage, as Christopher said before, in real time, regardless of the fact you are accessing from your corporate network, remote, or from remote mobile device. Sorry. Up to date, Netskope is the only cloud native CASB and secure web gateway company to be inside and represent in both Magic Quadrant, as the slide is saying, Magic Quadrant Gartner, and considering that 50% of our web traffic is cloud, has been very useful for our customer to have a unique proposition console able to cover all your web traffic, SaaS and IaaS, managed or unmanaged SaaS or other SaaS in the cloud. Okay, we are continuing investing in our proposition to support the cloud adoption and the digital transformation journey, protecting all your data in the cloud wherever they stay. Always last thing, always with the New Age, we support tens of millions of users across more than 1,200 global customers, including also companies take part of the Fortune 100. We have also important European customers in the Fortune 1, like for example, Airbus, Daimler, Deutsche Bank. as you understood, we want to be a legendary company protecting users and data, no matter where they are located, with no compromise in terms of latency or scale. We would like to support your digital transformation project in order to support your business to accelerate. This is overall our mission. Now let's go to Andy Atlin presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm really pleased to be presenting, but sad that Paolo can't. As Andrea said, unfortunately, he was going too fast on his bicycle and he's had a bit of an accident. But yeah, I've stepped in and I'll happily do this for you guys. So I've been at Netskope for 7 years, and I've watched this market grow and watched our technology grow. And what I wanted to do, rather than take you through a PowerPoint presentation, I wanted to try to make this a little bit more interactive. So I'm going to attempt to draw the evolution of our technology and what it can do for you and your customers. So if I start this really simply, we are all very familiar with creating what I would call a defense in depth architecture. So if this is our enterprise headquarters, over the years, what we've done is we've built a security perimeter. And this security perimeter consisted of technologies like a firewall, perhaps things like a DDoS platform, maybe proxies. And along with our proxies, what we also had were things like an AV engine. Perhaps we had a DLP capability as well. And all of these security solutions were built and installed by us because the way we worked was very straightforward. What we had in our office was a network, and connected to our network, we had servers. And this is still the same true for many companies, in fact. And what we were able to do was, we would go into the office with our device, we would connect to the network, and we would use our servers. And on these servers, we had our data. And so this was a very proven way of working. Many, many years, we all worked in this environment, and we still have the opportunity in some and most circumstances to use an aspect of this. But about 5 or 6 years ago, what we started to see was that users were already working a little bit remotely. People were working from home, not quite to the extent as with the pandemic, but if they were remote workers, they would connect into this infrastructure, probably connect in via a VPN. And what they would do is they would then have access via the VPN into the network. So the user, being either local or remote, could access the applications and the data that was the intellectual property of the organization, whether it be manufacturing, banking, retail, any sort of discipline. But we started to see quite a dramatic change, because the way in which people were using the internet previously was that we had the World Wide Web, and with the World Wide Web, what we effectively had were web servers. And these web servers that sat out here were sources of information for our users to access. So typically, this infrastructure here provided levels of control that we needed. So it was access control, and it was control for threats. So we wanted to stop people attacking our networks using our firewalls, our DDoS, our proxies. And when a user was going out to the internet, it was our proxy that provided us with the reassurance that the user wasn't going to hit a site that perhaps was more harmful, or a site that was inappropriate, or a site that was there as a trap for them. So we worked with this architecture, and everything was great. But then what we started to see was there was an evolution starting to happen. And so when I joined Netskope in 2014, services like Office 365 were starting to become available for organizations to use. So rather than building an Exchange server or a SharePoint server and building your AD environment purely on-prem, you could now start to buy these in the cloud. It wasn't just 365, you had lots of applications starting to grow here. And in fact, now there are thousands of applications out here, whether it be things like, Dropbox or Box or ZippyShare or WeTransfer or Salesforce or Workday, or, there are thousands of these apps now. And this was all good news because it meant that we could be really agile with the way in which we worked. So any organization, rather than having to wait to buy physical hardware, do the updates on that hardware, install it, manage it yourself, you could simply sign up for a subscription out here. And what we started to see was that the data that sat here was now starting to move out here. And in fairness, even with the web, the data was starting to move out here. People were blogging more. They were, very much sharing information more widely out on the internet. So what this meant was that, if your data that was once behind your perimeter was now outside of your perimeter here, users on any device, whether they be, your corporate device here, or whether they be, a BYOD device, what they could do is they could go direct to these services, and they would no longer go through this security infrastructure. So organizations started to lose visibility, be at risk, and potentially start to be open to a wider set of threats. So what we decided to do at Netskope was to create a new capability that would protect users and protect the organization's data. So if the user was either on-prem or off-prem, and whether they're on a corporate device or a BYOD device, we wanted to be able to ensure that if they would go into websites, or in this case, SaaS sites, so software as a service, either these services, we could provide protection. So what we did was we created a global infrastructure. So in the great video that started the event, this was mentioned in there. And what we did was we created a platform, and the platform has two major components to it. What we have is we have a management plane. So the management plane, as Elena said, is a single pane of glass where you can look at reports, you can do configurations, you can react to incidents. It is a single console that the administrator can log into. And this console here is an interactive console. I'll show you this as well. And it's one place to go to access all services that we deliver. But we complement this with what we call the data plane. So the data plane is our global infrastructure. And sometimes the cloud is a little bit smoke and mirrors as to what it is. And what we did is we basically formed a platform engineering team. So we hired some engineers. We built a facility in Seattle, in Washington, in the United States. And what they do is they build racks. So they physically, get a rack. They've got hardware in that rack. It's all state-of-the-art, solid-state hardware. No disk drives. Everything is solid state. And what we do is we test the workings of these racks. So we make sure that the optics are working, the power supplies are working, all the memory is completely addressable. And then what we do is we know a location where we want to ship that equipment to. And so what we do is we look at our customer base and we listen to our customers. And if they say, we are going to have 10,000 users in Cyprus, what we'll do is we need to put a node closer to that. So we can basically put a node as close to our users as possible. And what we'll do is we'll install that node into an internet exchange point, a tier 1 carrier, somewhere where there's optimal connectivity. And so what we're doing here is, this is our data plane, and it's managed from our management plane. And what our data plane gives us, first of all, is always available connectivity. So it is a network routable element. So we've got an IP address range, we control our IP address ranges, and what we do is we ensure that we connect our infrastructure directly to providers like Microsoft or Amazon or Google. So we have direct peering with these global infrastructures. What we also do is we also expect all traffic that's going to the internet to be secure. We expect it to be SSL. So again, in that brilliant video, it's a day, 90%, 85% of traffic going to the internet now is secure traffic. So if you can't look inside that traffic, you're going to be blind. So things like the traditional proxies here, I spent 15 years selling Blue Coat. Proxies were designed to look at port 80. They will look at 443, but it's a heavy burden on them, and they're not that great at it. Whereas for our stack, we were built in the cloud for this traffic. So we can decrypt SSL. Once we decrypt SSL, what we can then do is we can then do the security services that were put in place here. So, but we were actually really clever at this, because what we'll do is we can look at the HTTP traffic and we can emulate the on-prem services like a proxy. And what we can do at this point here is, if a user is going to a website and the traffic is redirected now to Netskope, and we have different ways of doing that. It doesn't matter whether the user's on-prem or off-prem. What we can do is we can set up traffic forwarding. So we can use things like tunnels, or we can use an endpoint client to steer the traffic. But what we'll do is we will take that traffic directly to the Netskope cloud. And when it hits the Netskope cloud, if the user is going to, perhaps content that you don't want them to go to, then we can block it. If they are doing a download from the site here, so content is coming to them and the content is dangerous, we can also block that. Because what we're doing is, not only are we doing effectively URL filtering here, like a traditional proxy, beyond that, what we also do is something called activity decoding. So whenever I access these services, whether it be web or cloud, I'm going to do things like a login, or I'll do an upload or a download. And what we can do is we can actually understand those activities. So from day one, we built our technology to be what we would traditionally call a CASB technology, a cloud access security broker. But it basically means that we built a very intelligent cloud proxy. And what it can do is it can take the traffic from the user, on-prem or off-prem, go into web, go into cloud. And either of these, what we can do is we can understand the exact activities. So we can understand, a login. And the reason we need to do this is because we want to ensure safe use of the cloud. So if your users are on perhaps your company devices here, and you've invested in Office 365, you should be allowed to log into Office 365. But if they're logging into Office 365 and it's not your corporate version of Office 365, so it's not my Netskope account, it's my Andy Appling account, maybe we should question whether they should be logging into their personal version of Office 365. Because if they're logging into their personal version, that means they could take their corporate data and upload it into a non-corporate version of the cloud app. So the activity decoding allows us to look at those specific activities. We can also look at the uploads. We can look at the downloads. And if we are seeing data movement here, what we can do is we can invoke other levels of security. So when we do this, what we can do is we can invoke what we call our DLP engine. I'm sure many people have heard of data leakage protection. It's our ability to identify, it's a credit card, it's a passport, it's an order form, it's something of importance. We can also invoke our threat protection capabilities. And with our threat engine, if somebody is being subjected to malware or ransomware, or a virus of some type, a Trojan being loaded, or a phishing site, we need to stop that. So our threat engine can stop that as well. We can do other aspects as well, is we can do things like we can encrypt data. So if it is a very sensitive document and it's going into a particular application, we can encrypt it. We can use a Microsoft AIP template to actually put security wrappers around this content as well. So we've now got visibility into where users are going, what they're doing with them, and what it is that is being uploaded or potentially downloaded. Now, if I turn my attention back here to the management plane, what we've got in the management plane as well is we have something called the CCI. So CCI is the Cloud Confidence Index. This is our intelligence engine about everything SaaS. So we know of over 30,000 different SaaS applications. And what we do is we classify them by risk. So if something has a rating of 0, it's basically a very high risk because we don't know anything about it. If it has a rating of 100, then it is low risk because we've got lots of boxes ticked because we know that there is less risk against that. So this intelligence database here can also be used here to control policy. So we've got, if you like, a risk engine in the policy that says, if my user here is going to a high risk SaaS application, then I might want to coach them away from that. So if they were going to something like ZippyShare here, ZippyShare as a cloud application is not very secure. We don't know where it's hosted. It's not compliant. When you upload your data to it, you lose control of your data. And therefore, if you lose control of your data, you've lost your intellectual property. So this is where we get to here. So just before I go on any further, are there any questions at all at the moment? Is anything springing to people's minds that you've got any questions about this at all? Not yet.
Andy, as far as I can see, there are not any questions there.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
You can move on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I
So,
didn't know you have so much drawing skills.
oh, yeah. Many years. I tell you what, during the pandemic, my mouse accuracy has got better and better. It was a little bit shaky before, but now I do it so often, it's getting better. I'm not sure if you can still see on my webcam, but I have a whiteboard behind me. I'm at my home office, so I have this glass on my wall, but it's too shiny. It's too shiny. When I write on it, nobody can see it. So it was a good idea, but it doesn't work very well. So that's why I have to use my mouse. Okay. So I have now this platform here, and what we've got now is effectively a way of moving the perimeter so that the organization doesn't need to rely on buying physical hardware, maintaining physical hardware, installing, updating. This can now be a per user subscription service. So go into a little bit more detail here. What we can also do is we can extend this beyond just web and SaaS applications. So many organizations still have the requirement to create things like their bespoke applications. So maybe I'm Barclays Bank, and what I want to do is I want to build a new banking application here. So what I'll do is I'll build my application here, and I may build this in AWS or Azure or GCP. And if I do, then this application doesn't fall under a SASE application. This is a private application here. So to gain access to this private application, particularly for the developers, this will not be publicly facing. I won't be able to get to this application unless I have a way to get in there. And normally what that would have been is via something like a VPN service. So VPNs are all good, but the problem with VPNs is that when you enable a VPN, it means that you join a network. So a little bit like down here, a VPN joins us to the network. And once I'm on the network, I can laterally move anywhere across that network. So what we've also developed is a way of introducing a zero trust model. So there's so many acronyms in our industry. It's bizarre. Everybody has a different term for the same thing. But basically, if an organization has built their application in AWS or Azure, what we can do is we can deploy something called a publisher. And what the publisher does is it connects back into the Netskope cloud. And when it connects back into the Netskope cloud, it makes an outbound connection to us. And what that will do is that will provide another way of connectivity for a user who connects to the Netskope cloud to allow them to access this application. So basically it's mimicking a VPN, but it's a little bit more controlled, because now we're only going to allow access to the application and not the network. So this can replace the VPN down here. So we can put a publisher in your network, so users can still connect into the headquarters to gain access, but this time the publisher is only going to allow them to access the particular application. So it has like an industry term here called zero trust network access. So, but think of it as a VPN. It's just a very precise VPN, and it allows you to enable remote access into the applications. But again, the joy of this is that your corporate user here, if they've got the Netskope client on their endpoint, I have it on my desktop here, this little icon up here, the Netskope client is enabled. That's just simply running there. It's a really lightweight client. It's basically an SSL VPN client. And what it does, it connects a secure connection, a 443 tunnel into the Netskope cloud from the user. And so whether they're going to the web, whether they're going to SaaS, or whether they're going to AWS, we can provide access there. And if you like, one of the last pieces of the jigsaw here is everything else on the internet. So the internet, has been, a piece of the plumbing in everybody's household now for many years. In fact, I remember going to Greece about 15 years ago. My sister-in-law is married to a Greek man, and they live in Eritrea. And obviously it's one of the Greek islands. I remember going there, and we were setting up, the broadband services there. And it was to allow my brother-in-law to continue his business there. He owned a business in Eritrea. And the internet allows us to connect to every service. And so we had things like FTP sites running so that people could upload documents. Now, FTP, isn't really a part of websites. It's not really a part of SaaS either, because it's been replaced by systems like Dropbox. And FTP sites are normally publicly available, so they don't normally always sit within AWS. So at the moment, we need to provide protection out here as well. Equally, things like DNS, DNS are also public-facing services on the internet. So the last piece of the jigsaw that we've now introduced is the ability to protect all services. So these services, if we look at this from a technology stack, our firewall down here was designed to look at TCP traffic. It was designed to look at UDP traffic. It was designed to look at things like ICMP traffic. So these are all obviously networking protocols here. So, and the firewall protects us for those. And what we've also done with our cloud platform is we have a cloud firewall included. So now, if somebody is going to anywhere on the internet, we can widen our capability so that we can start to look at all traffic. So what this would potentially mean is if I now get my eraser here, what I could do is all of this infrastructure that we built here, it's no longer necessary, because what you can see is I've got DLP in the cloud, I've got threat protection in the cloud, I've got my proxy in the cloud, and now I've got my firewall in the cloud. So everything that I had deployed down here, as we move forward, can actually be replaced. So what we can do is we can extend a tunnel now directly to the corporate network. And then this tunnel here, this can be something like an SD-WAN service here. So it could be a GRE tunnel, it could be an IPsec tunnel, and we connect up that network into the Netskope cloud. We've got the firewall, we've got the web protection, the SaaS protection, the public cloud protection, and basically everything else across the internet here. So now you've got one console here with one configuration policy. You've got one reporting engine in here to see where users are going and what they're doing. And then you can overlay here all of the capabilities that you're likely to need. Now, there's a lot on this screen. And one thing I do want to stress is that nobody buys it all, or very rarely buys it all on the first engagement with Netskope. What we typically find is that an organization will be led through a journey. So it's, if you like, a journey to the cloud. It's a transition. And what we do is typically, it might be a case that the proxy that sat down here may be becoming end of life, or purely the fact that all users now, or a majority of users, are now remote users. And whether they're on their BYD devices coming to Netskope, or whether they're standalone devices out here, rather than them backhaul into this infrastructure to go back out, it's more efficient, particularly when they're accessing SaaS services, to go direct. So going direct to net is now optimal for a user experience. So what we can do is, rather than replace these legacy technologies, perhaps we'll just buy the proxy capability from Netskope. So anything that's going on port 80 or 443 that you wanted to do for web browsing protection, we could take that to Netskope and we can do the URL filtering only. So we're not worried about the other services at the first deployment. It is simply a case of replacement of the proxy. If we are doing the proxy replacement, it's probably advisable to have the full threat capabilities as well. So we do two types of threat protection. We do a fast scan. So that's things like signature-based analysis, looking at the known knowns. We also use deep scan analysis. We've got sandboxing in our platform to protect against zero-day attacks. We can do the phishing protection in our platform. So if somebody is hosting on Azure, a trusted domain, a phishing site, we'll protect users from that as well. So this is the picture that I wanted to build for you as to what is capable. What I like to do is to show you it. But before I sort of go to a quick demo for you, are there any questions at the moment? Hopefully I haven't confused anybody. No, we're all okay.
I have a question for you, Andy. I'm not a technical person, but I have a generic, let's say, question.
Okay.
We saw, due to the pandemic, we saw a mass movement to the cloud. In your experience, what kind of businesses, I mean, what kind of businesses regarding their size and if they are in the public or the private sector are moving to cloud faster than others?
Right. We've seen perhaps there's two stages of it, the way we saw it, and that was we saw some larger companies, automotive, manufacturing, large retailers move into the cloud quite rapidly. So particularly in retail, so supermarket chains and food manufacturing, what we saw is that they started to move to the cloud because it was easier for them to work with third-party organizations. So the producers of bread or the producers of groceries or whatever, what we saw is that they started to adopt the cloud quite rapidly because not only were the shopping sort of supermarkets in need of a way to collaborate quicker, but the suppliers wanted to collaborate more openly as well. So with open collaboration of things like OneDrive for file sharing or SharePoint for interaction, or even Teams, lots of people using Teams, of course, that accelerated it for retail manufacturing. We did see automotive go there as well. And now more recently, what we've seen are the SMB market, the small business market, are rapidly looking at not buying any further products on-prem. So their adoption to the cloud hasn't been so much the services out here, but it has been, utilizing this part of the security stack. So yeah, there's definitely two parts. Heavy move in retail, because it gives them agility to be very responsive to the pandemic. And now, because of the pandemic, less people going to the office, more people wanting to be agile. So the small businesses are starting to realize they don't want people coming back in to be protected. They want to protect them going direct to net.
I see. So
Okay.
before you proceed with the demo presentation, I have a technical question for you by Mr. John Pavlidis from Algo Systems. He's asking how exactly it works technically. It is a DNS based, VPN, or client based?
Sure. So we can do it both ways. Basically, the simplest way to use our technology is to deploy the Netskope client onto the endpoint, and the Netskope client takes and does the traffic steering. And what it will do, it has a DNS watcher. So when a user tries to go to a site, everything has to resolve. And what we do is we see where the user is going, and then we take the traffic through the steering into the Netskope cloud. So mostly it's Netskope client gets deployed. Occasionally it will be users on-prem here, and they will use more traditional approaches like a pack file or a browser configuration to point to the Netskope explicit proxy in the cloud. So two main ways: explicit proxy through traditional, or we use the Netskope client and we use DNS to select the traffic to go to the cloud.
Okay, John, I think Andy answered your question, but in any case, we are at your disposal after the webinar to talk about it deeply. Okay. So Andy,
Indeed.
let's proceed with the demo. We have almost 10 minutes left.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so you should now see my screen. I'm a Google sort of browsing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just to try to walk through, just very simply, a typical life in the day of a user. Yeah, when I log in the morning, I log into my laptop, and the first thing I'm going to do is probably see the world news, what's happening in the world today. So BBC website. Most people is going to do something like this. But you're also going to get users who perhaps, they're on their corporate laptop, and we want to make sure that they're not doing things that they shouldn't do. Maybe users may want to perhaps have a look at some gambling sites. Now, with gambling sites, we don't want them to use the corporate device to go to a gambling site. There are other categories of content we don't want users to go to. So we're going to do what we have done traditionally with other security products. We're going to block them. So you can customize this page, you can make it do what you want, you can make it look what you want. So what we're doing here is very straightforward. We're emulating what we did with proxies, a secure web gateway. We're going to control where users are going. But what we're not limited to is purely web traffic. As per the diagram, we can go to SaaS sites as well. So if I want to go to a SaaS site, maybe I want to go to Dropbox. So if I go to Dropbox here, I can go into Dropbox. And you can see I can log into Dropbox. So this is my personal account of Dropbox here. I can sign in to my personal account of Dropbox. And when I sign into here, I've then got access to my my upload capabilities, which is all good. But we also know that there are some high risk sites as well, like WeTransfer. So WeTransfer is commonly used, but it's not the best of sites, because whilst it's easy to use, some of the data is not hosted in their own services, it's in third-party services. They may own the data when you upload to it. So if I try to do that, now we're in breach of use policy. Access to this SaaS application is unauthorized. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the Netskope risk model to contain where my users are going to. So now I've got access over websites and SaaS applications. Now, if it is a SaaS application, and I want to go to somewhere like Office 365, I said that I can not only control where I'm going to with the type of application, but how I'm logging into it as well. So you can see here, this is Microsoft, this is Office 365, Microsoft Online, and this is my personal email address. So I am allowed to use Office 365 because it's the corporate application. It's a very well-respected application. And when I log into here, you can see what we're doing is we're detecting this is a personal instance of the application. So I don't want my users to go to that. But what I do want is I do want to allow my users to go to their corporate version. So I'll go back to Office 365, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in with my Netskope account. So when I log into here, it's going to prompt me to authenticate. And as I authenticate here, it's going to let me sign in. And when I sign into here, I've got access now into my corporate version of Office 365. And if I go into here, I've got all my corporate documents. And you see I've got a customer renewals document here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to download that. So I've now got my customer renewals document that I've downloaded from Office 365 onto my my device. But I've still got access to Dropbox, my personal Dropbox. So if I go into my uploads folder here, and what I'm going to do is now I'm going to upload that file that I've just downloaded. So I'm going to go to my downloads, I'm going to my company document. This is my renewals document that I've just downloaded. So this is company confidential information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now upload that to my personal version of Dropbox. And what you can see I've done is I've triggered here because this is a breach of use, because I'm clearly trying to upload a company document into my personal instance of Dropbox. So that's obviously a big no-no. So I don't want that to happen. So I've now started to show you that what I can do is I can control access, and I control data movement, and I can control risk. So just in the normal daily life of a user now, I can securely enable them to safely use these services on the internet. So with regards to what that looks like, so this is our cloud console. So I'm logging in now as the administrator. And what we have is we have a real-time dashboard to log into. I can see over the last 7 days, I've used 11 applications, 5 different websites. I'm a single user, bytes movement here. This is monitoring uploads for me as a user, any high-risk applications, my top used applications, my blocked categories here, my DLP. I can see I've got blocked instance for Dropbox, for Office, Outlook, and I've got absolute visibility now of what my users are doing. If I go into my alerts here and application events, you can see here, I just tried to go to WeTransfer. And when I tried to go there, it's told me it's high risk. So the action was a block. When I tried to go to Dropbox here, this created an alert. My orange icon here says it's an alert. If I open up this incident here, I've got all of the details I need to ensure that I know what's happening with this session. So this was an alert generated. It sent me a user alert, that pop-up that I received to say, I'm in breach of policy. This was the policy that triggered. I went to Dropbox here. When I look at this, this is me as a user. So my identified user is Andy at Netskope. But my from user, the user I was logging in to Dropbox, is with andyappling.com. I'm on my iMac. I'm running Catalina in the OS version. In here, I've got my instance here, so it knows that it's my personal instance because it's andyappling.com, not netscope.com. The actual activity was an upload, and it triggered a DLP rule. So that document was identified as sensitive. And if I look here, it takes me to my DLP incident. And my DLP incident here, when I look at the details here, what it's going to give me is the forensics output as to say what the violation was as to why this was blocked. And if I scroll down, I can see that this was labeled as a document that had a security label attached to it. And if I want to see the original document here, I've got evidence to see this was all of the information that was sent up, and I've got mapping of that document. So this could be, PII data, GDPR data. And we have templates already in place to look at that. So within my platform, I've also got an analytics engine. So if you wanted to see what my users were doing with their behavior, how many users are being blocked, which sites are most commonly blocked, I've got a whole series here of dashboards. And these dashboards include things like my web usage summary. So who are my top users? What are my top sites that they go into? What is the total utilization of those sites here? So I've seen these are my top 16 sites. These are my top categories that people are going to: automotive, gambling, content servers, government and legal. In here, these are the total sites by all bytes. So I can see the percentage of bytes going up here. I can see here my top users. Obviously, this is just my test environment, so there's not a lot here. And so I've got full visibility now. And if I want to see which sites, I simply drill down into this. And it gives me each individual site here. So Windows Update, Go, Office. If I go into Office here, I can look at the uploads, the downloads into here. I've got Skype being used. I've got Sky Sports. I watch Formula One. I can see how much uploaded data has gone to Sky Sports. There's no data for Sky Sports. But what I've got here is the ability to drill down into this. So hopefully you've got a bit of a picture now as to what we can do. Say it's very simple to deploy. On my device here, all I had to do was set up a user. So in my console here, I've got my users defined. These are my users here. I select a user here. When I select my user, I say send an invitation. and the invitation is sent to the user via email. You can use SCCM, MDM platforms to do this as well. But the user gets an invite. I click on the invite. It installs my client up here. Looking at my client, I'm connected into the platform here. So I've got private connections into the platform. It's going to scan all web traffic and cloud traffic. This is my gateway, so my tenant that I've connected to here. And then what I do is I simply define my policies in my platform, and my policies that I deploy here will be, scan all content for threats, look at cloud storage and alert users. If I see executable files being downloaded, block them. I've got remote browser isolation capabilities, blocking unacceptable websites. We saw that through blocking gambling, block proxy anonymizers, block high-risk cloud storage. I simply create my policies here. Any of these policies, you open them up, you say, where's the destination? It's by category. What I'm looking for is uploads and downloads, the actions to take, and then how to set that policy. So the policy engine is also pretty straightforward to define, and that allows you to set the standard of security controls. I'm conscious I've reached the top of the hour. Are there any last questions at all about the platform, Netskope, or anything else I can help with you at all?